Hello BookTube, Sarah here and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm coming to you with a discussion video, and this discussion video has been a long time in the planning stations. It has been on my list of videos to do probably since I first started my channel. Reason behind that is that I think the general public seems to have a one-track mind when it comes to romance novels and how they are, pornography for women, how they are not worthwhile reading, how they're, not very well written, especially the Harlequin novels. But I'm going to talk about romance novels in general. And like I said, I've wanted to do this pretty much since I started my channel, and reason being is because I think I've mentioned this before. Many years ago I had a BookTube channel, and I talked about all the same kind of books that I'm talking about now. Well, I just felt that at that time, BookTube was so saturated with YA and, fantasy and sci-fi and stuff that maybe there wasn't a place for me. Well, now, with I think what they're calling BookTube 2.0, there is very happily a place for me, and I found a lot of other people like me. So, I realized when I started this channel again that I kind of wanted to do this video to those of you who don't necessarily read romance novels, and maybe you'll give them a chance. I'm assuming if you're watching my channel, you do read them, because that's the majority of what I talk about, but anyway. So yeah, it's been like on my list to do for a while, and a comment was made on my Friday reads this weekend that just passed that was kind of the catalyst that really pushed this to the front of the line. And I am not saying I was not happy with this person's comment. I am so happy that I think it's Treehugger Spirit is who left the comment. Thank you so much for leaving the comment. I do appreciate it because it really lit a fire under me and really made me want to do this video. So in a roundabout way, thanks. She pretty much was saying that, romance novels are junk and they're fluffy and, they're not any kind of high learning kind of books. I'm paraphrasing, I apologize. I don't have written down what she wrote. But yeah, I just thought, you know what, I really want to sit and do this video. Now, the thing that she did say is that she reads them and she enjoys them, but she just doesn't consider them to be, anything high caliber. And the reason that she posted that was because in my Friday reads, I made a comment about the book that I was reading, To Love a Cop, by Janice K. Johnson, which was fabulous. I finished it over the weekend. I made a comment about, socially, and it really raises some points about gun control. And, that's kind of where the comment came from was, well, no, it's a romance novel. But yes, romance novels can do that. So I've got some points here that I wrote down this morning, so I hope or over the weekend, so I hope you guys don't mind. I'm just going to try and go through this. I'm going to try my best not to edit this, so this is just pretty much going to be me and my rambly thoughts, and I hope you guys can keep up. And yeah, so let's really jump right into it. So the first thing is like, not all books you need to learn something from, and romance novels are not the only books that are like this. Sci-fi, fantasy, YA, espionage thrillers, stuff like The Hunt for Red October, classics. You don't necessarily learn from any of those books. There are some within the categories that you're going to learn from, absolutely. That, you might think you know everything, but then you read a book that it just happens to be a subplot of something and go, oh, wait, I never thought about that before. You might not be learning something, but it might change your point of view. So that's not just for romance novels. And I think romance novels get a bad rap because they are considered, fluffy and this and that, and like candy reading and brain candy, I guess you could call it. So, it's not just specific to this genre. Let me put it that way. The public sees a romance novel a certain way. They see these covers when you go into Chapters or into Barnes & Noble, or you're looking on Amazon, and, they're the couple intertwined on the cover. Or, you get the 50 Shades of Grey kind of romance novel where it's like The Feather or something like that, it's going to be, erotica. And, they look at it and go, oh, that's brain candy or that's whatever. And especially with the Harlequin novels, I think, they seem to really get a bad rap because there are so many of them, because they are mass produced. And they figure that they're just, producing 6 a month and, there's no thought process that goes into them. There's no, great writing, no great editing. But in some cases, yes, there are some that I've read that I've kind of gone, oh, really? Like, this is bad. But I have read New York Times bestsellers that I think that as well. So it's up to each individual person as well. There are some that really strike a chord that years later I will still think about because of the content in the book. Um, so yeah, that's I think that's how the public sees it. If they're not romance novels readers, they go even into Walmart. You see the stack of Harlequin books, and a lot of people are just like, "Oh, I'll grab a couple of those. I'm going up to the cottage for the weekend, and I need some fluffy reading." But the reality is, you could sit down with that book, and it could totally blow you away. And but again, this I could be talking about any book. Really, let's be honest. I could be talking about any kind of book. So, what makes a romance novel? Well, I did kind of look this up because I want to know the definition of a romance novel. And essentially, what a romance novel is, it's a story about a couple and how they meet and come together, and their romantic relationship essentially that ends in a happy ending. That's the catalyst, I think, or not the catalyst, but that's like the big sticking point in a romance novel, is that it needs to have a happy ending. And a lot of people will, poo-poo romance novels. Oh, I don't read romance. Romance is horrible. Do you read Jane Austen? Because Jane Austen is romance. As far as I'm concerned, Pride and Prejudice, Emma, Sense and Sensibility. I haven't read them personally, but I get the gist of the stories. They are about a couple finding romance together, and it ends in a happy ending. That's a romance novel. So those people who, I only read classics, I don't read romance, well, guess what? You do read romance. There was a lot of romance written back then, and it's a lot simpler. I think a lot of people connotate a romance novel needing to have adult content, sexual situations, if you will. That's not the case. There are some wonderfully, wonderfully written, and there's some of my favorites. Now, my own personal belief system is not Christian necessarily, but I love Christian romance novels. I adore them. I think that I love more than anything is that they focus on that relationship. They focus on the, their emotional relationship as opposed to the sexual relationship. And, some romance novels can do both and can do both beautifully. But with Christian romance, they take the sexual part out of it. So there's none of that. And I love that. And every now and then that is so refreshing and so wonderful. And I talk about the love-inspired Harlequins all the time on this channel. And I love them. And I highly recommend that you check them out. Another book I want to mention is probably one that a lot of people bill as a romance novel. And probably one of the greatest romance novels of all time. And bursting your bubble here, guys, it's not a romance novel. Gone with the Wind. Gone with the Wind is one of my very favorite books. I mean, it is in my top 5 of all time. I've read it 6 times. I've watched the movie 2 or 3 times that amount. And I just think it's an unbelievably wonderful story about Scarlet and about Rhett and about the Civil War and how the two of them grow as people. But the end of the book is not a happy ending. Those of you who might have only seen the movie, spoiler alert if you haven't read the book or seen the movie, I do apologize, but I'm pretty sure everyone is familiar with this. I think it was listed on the American Film Institute's #1 movie line of all time, and that was, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. So at the very end of the movie and book, he leaves her. He walks out on her, end of story. There's no happy ending there, like for the two of them. And that's what I mean by when I say a romance novel needs to have a happy ending. It's a happy ending for those two characters. And that's what I always say about romance. That's the wonderful thing about it, is that when you start the story and you meet this guy and this girl, you know at the end they're going to end up together. But it's the journey on how they get there. That's the romantic and wonderful part that I love reading. So, quick little note on Gone with the Wind that made me, when I was thinking about this video and wanting to do this video, The Simpsons are one of my favorite TV shows. And there's a great throwaway joke in one of the earlier seasons of The Simpsons in reference to Gone with the Wind. And in this throwaway scene, they're in the old folks' home, like the seniors' home. And all the seniors are sitting around watching Gone with the Wind for seniors. And that very last line is dubbed over, and it says, "Frankly, my dear, I love you. Let's get married." And I just think that makes me laugh every time I see it. Because, that's how they turn that book into a romance novel, that it does have a happy ending. So yeah. So pornography for women, I think I've kind of touched on that. They are not all pornography for women. Or men. I don't want to generalize, because there are a lot of men who like to read romance novels. And that's absolutely awesome. I think that's super cool. Steve Donahue, he squees whenever he gets a Regency romance, and that makes my heart happy. I just love it. And, like that, not just because of the kind of book, but because somebody gets that excited about a book. And I think that's fantastic. And he gets excited about all of his books. Well, most of them anyway, unless they're the made-up stories. Touch on the fact that people say they're junk writing. Like I talked about a little bit earlier in this video with the Harlequin books, that they're mass-produced, that, you know, and there are some of them that the writing isn't that great. You could pick up any book off the shelf. I watch so many booktube videos, and a lot of booktubers talk about books, and I at least once a day when I'm watching videos, I hear people say, well, the writing really wasn't that great. That can be for anything. Don't generalize that just to mass market romance novels, because it's not true. Unless you've read like every single romance novel and you can say that, oh, every single one of them was garbage writing. And I think that if all of them were garbage writing, I don't think they'd be as popular as they are. I think a lot of people, a lot of intelligent, educated women and men read these books and they enjoy these books. That's got to say something. That they're fluffy books, that they have no value, that you don't learn anything from them, that they're just like couple meets, you know, they have like a one-night stand, or there's several or whatever, and, you know, there's sex, and then they end up together and decide, oh, let's just stay together. You know, like that's the basic format of a romance novel. No, there is plot in there. As I like to joke, there's kind of two types of romance novels, and there are romance novels like that. Again, I'm not trying to generalize here in this video, but a lot of those kinds that I'm talking about are the ones that you see on Amazon. They're like the self-published, where it's essentially like, ding dong, pizza guy, oh, I don't have any money to pay you, let's have sex. That kind of a book. Whereas there's also pornography that is like a story. And even though a lot of these books might contain sex scenes, there is still a plot. And if there wasn't a plot, believe me, I wouldn't read them. Because 9 times out of 10 when I get to a sex scene, I'm like, okay, flip. Okay, we're done. All right, back to the story. I don't need to necessarily read that. Not that I don't like it, not that it bothers me, not that believe me, I'm not prudish in any way, shape, or form when it comes to that kind of thing in what I read. But I just, especially when there's more than one, I sometimes like to read at least one just to see how it's written, because some writers can do it very well and some writers can do it not so well. And the book I'm reading right now, I like to consider it to be closed door, a closed door sex scene, where there is one. You're getting like the beginning of it, but then they close the door and you're no longer in the room and you don't get every single thing that happens. You know, they wake up the next morning or later that night or whatever the case may be. And then there's the sex scenes where you're in the room. So yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of both. I've totally gone off topic, I think, here. Sorry guys. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is that it's not just sex. They're not just about that. In just some of the books that I have read lately, like I talked about To Love a Cop, there was some great messages on gun control in that book. I've read books that contain subplots or side plots or plots themselves that are about abuse, whether it be sexual, domestic, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, child abuse. The ones that stick out in my head right now that I read recently were the Songbirds of Darling Bay, book 2 and book 3 that I read this year. Book 2 dealt with the main character was bullied when she was younger because she was a heavier set girl. And then she started a domestic abuse hotline because she met someone who was abused and she wanted to help that person. And then in the last book, the one that I just finished this month, the last in the trilogy, the main character, the last sister, the youngest sister, was raped. And that was a huge part of who she was, and that made who she was. Those are romance novels. Animal Welfare, the one that I'm reading right now, A New Leash on Love, which is an adorable book and I'm almost done it. It deals a lot with animal welfare and how animals are treated and no-kill shelters and things like that. The In at Eagle Point that I finished earlier this month dealt with ADHD. One of the side characters had ADHD, and it dealt with divorce, and it dealt with, you know, how to raise kids in divorce and getting along amicably with your ex-spouse. And then one of my favorite Kristen Higgins books, The Next Best Thing. The main character is a widow. She's a young widow. And, you know, it's about her dealing with that. You know, these aren't just meet, sex, done. You know, like there are plots to them. The last 2 points I want to make, because I do not want this video to be horribly, horribly long, is I just want to touch on something that's been bothering me since day one on BookTube. And it's not just on BookTube, I shouldn't generalize like that. It's in general in public. That as an adult woman, let's say I'm riding the train to or from work, or the bus, or whatever kind of public transportation I'm on. And I'm sitting there in my chair happily reading a book. And I'm reading this book. how many people are going to comment? Maybe not comment, but comment to themselves, comment to the person they're sitting beside, perhaps share a little giggle. Do you see what she's reading? Oh my goodness, how embarrassing, you know? Look at that cover, you know, that shirtless cowboy on that cover. Oh my gosh, it's all about, you know, sex, and it's absolute. Is that appropriate? Do you think that's appropriate? Right? Have you guys been there and you've seen somebody reading 50 Shades of Grey on a train, and you're kind of thinking to yourself, well, I know why they're reading that book. But how do you not know that there's not a great story to this, that there's not a great plot to this? You don't know that. But on the flip side, I'm sitting on that same train, and I'm reading Harry Potter, a book for children. A book written for children. I'm not knocking this. These are great books. I really enjoyed them. My father just finished rereading through the entire series, and he's 69 years old. You know, he loved them. But yet, if he was sitting on the train, an adult male, in his 60s, in his business suit and tie, reading Harry Potter, people would stop him and say, what do you think about it? Do you like it? Is it any good? Why? Why do we get the flip? Why? I don't understand. If this was 20 years ago, probably more than that. When did Harry Potter come out? 20 years ago? Before the whole Harry Potter craze, like years before that. If my father had been on a train, you know, coming from work, reading a children's book, essentially a children's book, people would have laughed at him. Am I wrong? No, I'm not. Now, society has said this is acceptable. And absolutely it's acceptable. Again, these are great books. So I'm not knocking that. I'm just simply trying to make a point that a book written for children, read by adults, is perfectly acceptable, but a book written for adults is not. Just because of the cover. If that book had any other cover, maybe just had the horse on it, or, you know, but then again, because it's a Harlequin, people are going to generalize because it's a Harlequin. If I was reading this, okay, that's a far less steamy cover, but I guarantee you I would still get the same comments, or maybe not as many, but still people going, well, it's just a romance novel, it can't be that interesting. People aren't necessarily going to stop you to ask what you think about it, unless that person is a romance novel lover as well. But the general public is not. So anyway, yeah. So that's the one thing I wanted to end this video by saying. The other thing is, please don't mock what other people read. I know that's said quite a bit here on BookTube, but I just feel like it needs to be said. And, you know, like, again, and I think people do it without thinking that they're doing it. You know, when I hear somebody talking, excuse me for reaching, when I hear somebody saying, well, I finished this book this month because, you know, I really, really needed a fluffy read. I really needed something that I really didn't have to think about, and, you know, that was just like brain candy. And you know what, that's fine. If you spend 90% of your time reading, I don't have anything around me, reading, you know, medical textbooks, yes, this is going to definitely be really easy to read after something like that. But then those of us who read those think, well, am I just reading stuff that's not worthwhile? Because I'm absolutely reading something that's worthwhile. I love these books. And because I love them, that makes them worthwhile to me. And I pretty much think that sums up this entire video. But yeah, so anyway, just some food for thought, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please comment in the comments bar below, or in the comment section below, if you want to do a response video to this. I would absolutely love to see it. Please link me or let me know, because I'd love to watch it. I want to hear other people's thoughts on this. And it's not just on the whole romance novel thing, but maybe you're a sci-fi reader and you find the same thing with sci-fi, or you find it with reading classics, or whatever the case may be, or because you read nothing but YA. You know, I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments on it. So anyway, guys, like I said, I hope you enjoyed this video. And until my next one, take care and happy reading, everybody. Thanks for watching. Bye.